Welcome to New Stripe City podcast for diehard Bengals fans. I'm your host, Ace Boogie, and I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of the articles that have come out between Marvin Lewis resigning and I think it was yesterday or the day before about Mike Brown speaking on the state of the Bengals and free agency. Um, to those who don't know, I'm going to first start this show off with just recapping some of the things that the coaches said. I'll also go through some of the potential free agents that the Bengals could be interested in, and then we'll also talk about ways that because it's been said that some don't think that the Bengals have enough money to be able to make an impact on free agency. So we'll go through some scenarios and I'll bring over some situations, and then I'll give my overall thoughts on exactly what I think the Bengals should do in free agency. So starting off, this all kind of kicked off because when Marvin Lewis came back, I'll go ahead and take some of the quotes from his interview when he came back. So a reporter asked him, "What are you going to change to get the job done?" And Lewis was quoted as saying, "I can't tell you. We have to change. I've gone through it. We need to be better at what we do. We're going to have changes to our staff. We're going to have to gain some better players. We're going to have to look to augment what we do and what we have right now on the football team, and we're going to have to do a better job of maybe adding some guys from other clubs. And then we have to look at that as we go into the draft and make sure that if the draft isn't strong in one area, then we need to take care of it prior to the draft. That's important to us as well. Again, at the end of the day, it comes down to us coaching better and our players going out and playing better. So then he was also asked, so is being more active in free agency something you discussed? And that was in relation to his return with Mike Brown. And he said, well, I don't know if that means more active. I don't know how many free agents we added last year, but just make sure you can add someone that helps. Add them. So this to me kind of, I'm assuming to the rest of Bengals Nation, kind of put the thought in the air that hey, maybe the Bengals will actually, in a sense, be active in free agency. And that was, I don't know if that was an illusion or what it was, but then that was also followed up by Mike Brown. And this is one of the things that Mike Brown said. Jim Ozwarski from the Cincinnati Enquirer had asked him in a one on one. Marv mentioned one thing that Marv mentioned as far as a change would be finding players from other teams to better augment. And this is what Mike Brown said. Mike Brown said that's talked about a lot. It's the offseason focus for many. It's driven by the cap. We have the system that we adhere to, and so does every other team in the league. Some of the teams that are especially successful last year in free agency, I think of Jacksonville, I think of the Rams, were teams that had an inordinate amount of cap room. They had been notably unsuccessful for years, doing this the previously to last season, and then they went out into their credit. They made some costly acquisitions, but helpful acquisitions. They were in a position to do it. Most teams aren't, and we fall into the category that most teams aren't. We try to spend our cap money in ways that would make sense. Our goal is to retain our own good players if we can, and that's the first order of business. And we can't always do that with the cap room we have. We do have a lot of it that is quickly overlooked whenever we do it. Oh, go do this and go and do that. Well, the chips, what does he say? Hold on, I'm sorry. I just lost where I was at. I was so frustrated, I lost where I was at. Well, the chips do have to do what they have been spent. They're gone. We look to do what we can within our own cap room. We do this every year, and we will do this year. We will allocate the cap room so that we have a combination of our own players, and that will be first and foremost, and then it will be elsewhere and what we can do to add to the team. Bruh, I'm kind of salty at this because it seems like even though they talked about Marvin and Mike Brown being on the same page, are they really on the same page? I don't know. I'm kind of somewhat disappointed because there have been plenty of cases, and when you look at the playoffs now, right, the last four teams, what do they all have in common? They brought in players from free agency. You look at the Vikings. No, they didn't make huge splashes, but they signed Riley Reef from the Detroit Lions, who was a spot that they needed on their offensive line since their offensive line struggled the year before. You look at the Patriots. They traded for Brandon Cooks. They brought in Stephon Gilmore. The Patriots make signings all the time. You look at the Eagles. Half of the moves that the Eagles made were like from outside players that they brought in, whether it was Alshon Jeffrey, whether it was LeGarrette Blunt, whether it's trading to bring in Jay Ajayi. They did something, and I just don't understand why Mike Brown feels like other teams haven't done it. You saw it last year in the Super Bowl with teams like the Falcons. They brought in Alex Mack. So I'm just really not buying the whole you don't have to spend money on free agents for your team to be good. So with that being said, the Bengals, and give me 1 second, I'm gonna do a share screen so you guys can see. We're gonna look at what the Bengals have in their cap space today, because I just really want to see what this is. Give me 1 second, guys. Okay, so for 2018, the Bengals have 33 million in cap. Their highest paid players are going to be Andy Dalton, AJ Green, Drake Kirkpatrick, Geno Atkins, Vontaze Burfict, Darquez Denard, and there are some notable players in here that are going to be paid. So that's understandable. And let's take a look at some of the free agents, right? So the Bengals are looking for one player, probably, a couple in Pacific or specific positions, excuse me, specifically. And you look at guys that are out there like a Nate Solder, you have a Don Terry Poe. Luke Jokel isn't really good, so they probably won't be looking at him. You have a Nagata who's definitely interesting because he's coming from where the new, excuse me, defensive coordinator Terrell Austin is coming from. You got guys like Terrell Pryor, Alden Smith, Greg Robinson. So you do have some guys that the Bengals could essentially be interested in. My question is just why aren't they interested in them? Why wouldn't they want to look at some of these guys that they have there? It just really to me doesn't make sense. But to me, some of the top available guys, like I went over, Nate Solder, he's a guy that's 30. He was ranked number 12 on the list of free agents. More than likely, he could pull in anywhere from 8 to 10 million average salary a year. You have Don Terry Poe, who's a DT nose tackle, ranked 18th, and he just signed last year a 1 year deal for 8 million. Could command up to 10 million, but he could go as low as 8. You have a guy like Eric Reed. The Bengals need help at safety. Hobson kind of mentioned that they could look at a safety in the draft. Why not grab a guy like Eric Reed or Kenny Vaccaro, who's also available? So this got me thinking, and to me, it's not that I don't understand what the Bengals are trying to do and that I don't respect their philosophy. There are certain issues with their philosophy that I don't agree with. And one of them would be, and I think we can all agree on this, is that they don't put, cut like players that they should. So I'm going through the list here, and this is just me hypothetically speaking, right? If the Bengals only have 33 million in cap space and they really want to focus, and from what Jeff Hobson and Mike Brown have said, they really want to focus that on retaining key guys like Geno Atkins, Carlos Dunlap, and Eifert. That makes sense. But this is the thing: you have 33 million in cap space. There's guys that they could cut to save money. So I went ahead and did all of this research and everything. And you have guys like Michael Johnson, who could save you 4.4 million in cap. Cedric Ogbuehi with a new offensive line coach, he could be a guy that could be cut. If you cut him, you save another $1 million. You have Sean Williams, who really hasn't lived up to that deal, who would net you 2.87 million in savings. Pac-Man Jones, even though he's a fan favorite, I'm not sure that he's worth the money. He he right now could net you 5.78 million in cap savings, and then you have Brandon LaFell. When you combine all of those players together, that's 18 million off of the books that the Bengals could use towards bringing in a new player. Whether that new player would be a Nate Solder, whether it would be a Don Terry Poe, Eric Reed, Kenny Vaccaro, those are a lot of guys that they could bring in. So I kind of find it hard to believe and hard to buy into their strategy when you don't cut players. You don't cut certain players. And I kind of understand it in some instances, but some places it just doesn't make sense. If you have a weakness somewhere and you have new coaches in and you're talking about blowing up and changing everything and bringing in some better guys where you can upgrade, then why not do it? Another option is, and one thing that I don't agree with their strategy, and that they don't implement this into their strategy, is that they don't ask players to restructure their deals. And it just baffles my mind that you can sit and watch a team like Baltimore last year, who had no cap space, turn to some of their best players and have them restructure their deals, most notably Jimmy Smith and some other guys, and they won't do it. I just don't understand it. If And this is a big point that I have to make here. I took some notes on this here. So last year, um, the Seahawks traded and got Dwayne Brown, a guy that we all wanted the Bengals to go after, right? When we were having offensive line problems. Not only did they trade to get Dwayne Brown, but Russell Wilson actually agreed to restructure $6 million of his salary, and he had that base salary turned into a prorated bonus over the 4 years of his deal in order to get that job done. Why can't Andy Dalton do the same thing? We've seen Tom Brady do it. We've seen other, and I don't think it's Andy's fault that it's not happening. But why isn't our front office pulling in Andy Dalton, AJ Green, guys who clearly want to win? And I don't think that it's a money issue. And even if it was a bonus prorated, they're more than likely going to get that money. So I don't see what the big deal of having those players meet with Duke Tobin or Mike Brown and making them restructure their deals. This team wants to win. These players want to win. I'm pretty sure they'd be willing to restructure $6 million of their current deal in order to bring in a Nate Soldier. I don't understand why the Bengals don't go about this. So with with between getting rid of players that would net you cap savings and having Andy do the same thing and restructure his deal, let me actually just show you this, how eerily similar this is between Russell Wilson and Andy Dalton. Let me just pull this up real quick, just so you guys know that I'm not just saying this just to say this. So when you look at Russell Wilson, this was the year last year where he restructured his deal. He restructured 6 million of that to move it from down here to down here. Now, Andy Dalton next year is going to be making one of the highest cap numbers on the Bengals team. He's got a high hard cap number, but he has this 13.7 million here, which could be moved to these two remaining years here. Why they won't do that, I have no idea. It makes absolutely no sense. And to me, that's all I'm saying, because if you do that, if the Bengals were to do that, then they would end up having a total of 54 million in cap space. So this is my thing, or 57 million, excuse me, 57 million in cap space, which is more than enough money to bring back and extend a Geno Atkins, because if you do that, you could probably even negotiate to lower his base salary for this year, as well as Carlos Dunlap. You could bring back those guys plus Tyler Eifert and still have enough money to go out and grab a Nate Solder. Or even if you don't want to do that, you can go out and grab somebody, a Dante Poe. Like, I'm just not buying the whole we don't have money to do it. And there's nothing wrong with the current strategy, but you need to change it up somewhat. Like Marvin Lewis even said out of his own mouth, if there is some kind of way that you can upgrade, you need to do it. Okay. Sorry, guy. I was kind of upset with everything that went on, because it's just ridiculous to even say that bringing in free agents doesn't work. I respect Mike Brown and what he's done, but come on, man. Like, you're really starting to. It's almost like you tried to put wool over our eyes with Marvin Lewis coming out and saying that it was important, and now you're going back and walking back on those comments. So I don't know. I really don't understand that. Mike Ray in the comments says, we definitely need a safety. I'm not sold on Williams or 43. Can't think it. Can't think it was named. Can't think of his name. Iloka. I'm not sold on Sean Williams. I'm definitely sold on Iloka. I think he's a really good, solid safety. I think he's had to play out of position, just due to Sean Williams struggling. Sean Williams is not worth $5 million a year, man. Like, to me, if you were to be able to take and sign a guy like Eric Reed and replace him with Sean Williams for $5 million a year. Anybody would do that in a heartbeat. I don't understand why they don't do that. Rory says if we could pull a trade with the Browns for McCarron, that would be awesome. Possibly more picks to move up in the draft. I believe the quality is more important than the quantity at this point. I agree with you, Rory, but I just don't think I think that the Browns trade for McCarron is kind of dead, and this is the reason I say that. Number one, they have a new general manager in there. They have the number one pick, so they just last year spent a second round pick on the quarterback position, which obviously they failed with that one. But I just don't see them, you know, not. I just feel like I'd rather, if I were in the Browns position, I would probably rather draft a guy at number one instead of giving another team in my division second and third round draft picks for him. But that's just me. And even if they did do that and still took a quarterback, that would just be stupid because then they'd invest three picks into the position. So as much as I'd like to get that Browns deal done, I'm not sure that it's really going to happen. But that's not here to say that that deal still can't happen with another team, say the Cardinals or anybody else that would be out there. The Jaguars might be willing to listen, depending on how Blake Bortles does for the rest. If they win a Super Bowl with them, then they probably wouldn't be. But there's a plenty of teams out there. New York could be another one that will be definitely willing to listen to McCarron. But this is the worst part about that is that we still don't know, and we probably won't until another month, whether or not McCarron will be walking. So honestly, that would suck. Um, Roy also says that I personally would love to shore up our safety position. It hasn't been the same since Nelson left. I think I totally agree with that. Since Reggie Nelson has left, it hasn't been the same. The typical Bengals move would probably be to bring Reggie Nelson back. Hopefully at probably a cheaper option, but Reggie Nelson would still be better than what we have here, so I wouldn't be opposed to that at all. Nagata is a very interesting prospect, and that's the thing, man. We're not asking for you to go out there and spend, $12 million on Le'Veon Bell or some outrageous amount of money on Jarvis Landry, but just make moves that actually make sense, man. Like look at the Jaguars. I mean, yeah, they had a whole bunch of money, but at the end of the day, they didn't just spend it stupidly. They actually made picks that were smart. They went after a guy like a Malik Jackson, an established player like a Calais Campbell. A Bouye. They went after guys that were notable guys, and they were young. I mean, Calais Campbell's pretty old, but the other guys were young. So it just you're making calculated decisions. You're not going out like to me. Mike Brown has been snake bitten ever since he did the whole Antoine Odom and Antonio Bryan, but those guys really weren't that good. Like anytime the Bengals have actually signed a pretty decent name, they've actually done pretty good. It's like you went out and signed T.O. There was no way, there's no way in hell that Antonio Brown is on the level of T.O., right? But T.O. balled out for us, right? That's where you should have spent that money at. That money that you gave to Antonio Bryan should have gone to Terrell Owens. And so it just doesn't make sense. Eifert, this is the thing. Eifert is being talked about as a guy that at first it seemed like they weren't sure if they wanted him back, but now they're saying that they want him back. And to me, I'm kind of torn on it because it's a really huge risk, man. Like I love to see Eifert back like everybody, but he's got to be a guy that stays healthy. You have to make sure that his health is okay before you bring him back. I'd love to have him here. I think Eifert would be willing to work out a deal with us. But if another team jumps up and shows him a huge contract, you can't do that, bro. You can't do that, bro. That's just my opinion. I just don't understand it. To me, um, Nate Soldier isn't a risk, bro. It's a left tackle protecting your quarterback. And I'm pretty sure if you sat Andy Dalton in a room and said, hey, we need about 6 million of your money for this year to be pushed to next year into a bonus so that we can protect your life, I'm pretty sure he'd want to do it, bro. I'm pretty sure he'd want to do it. So you guys let me know what your thoughts are on the whole free agency process. Me personally, after getting some great news, I'm kind of taken back by this, and I'm not trying to be an unrealistic fan, but I don't think it's unrealistic to want to go out and sign a guy like a Eric Reed, to try to go out and sign a Nate Solder. those are guys that you're not going to find in the draft. And that's just my opinion on it. I think if you were able to sign a Nate Solder from the Patriots, our draft would open up. We could take whoever we'd like with that 12th pick. And we could still fix the line in the draft. You could still get a Billy Price in the second round, and that's my thing, man. Like you have to make smart, calculated decisions, and I don't think that the Bengals have in the last couple of years because when you look at last year, not saying that Dre didn't deserve that money, but they could have they could have saved some money in my opinion with Dre. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have re-signed him, but they paid him a lot of money, which is high cornerback money, but you still have to be smart about the way that you're going about it because some of that money could have been used for Darqueze Dennard. Now you need Darqueze Dennard. Now you don't really have the money for him. So we'll see what happens. I'm still going to remain optimistic. I hope that Marvin Lewis can get Mike Brown to think outside the box and potentially think about doing some restructuring deals. And I'm just putting this out there because hopefully it gets to Andy Dalton or somebody else that can say, hey, I'm willing to take less money for you to bring this player in that can help us win now, that can help us be good for years to come. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. So you guys, like I said, let me know what your comments are. Leave your reactions in there. Um, and let me know. I'm kind of interested to hear what you guys think. I just really am disappointed in hearing Mike Brown talk this way, and I try not to slam him, but come on, man. Come on. You got to be real now. You got to be real now. All four teams that are in the playoffs right now have made free agency moves in some sort of form or fashion, whether it's the Eagles, whether it's the Vikings, whether it's the Jaguars, or whether it's the Patriots. They've all made moves. It's time for us to start making moves. And I'm not saying to make any move, but make smart moves, but also make sure that you make moves like getting your players to restructure and cutting the right players. And that doesn't mean that you have to outright cut them, but at least approach them with some kind of restructuring thing. See if they really, how much they really want to be in Cincinnati. Not, don't, to me, don't wait until they're in their prime and they're getting offered huge numbers to say, well, it's either here or you can just step, because that's just not what you need to do. But as usual, I'll leave you guys with a who day all day, every day, and especially on Sunday. Be sure to comment, subscribe, do all of that, man, so we can keep this thing going. Peace.